Everyone dreams of love, but Clara's dream was delayed by years of responsibilities, sacrifices, and silent tears when she finally got a chance to be a mail-order bride. Her heart beat with the hope of being wanted, chosen, and loved. She traveled across states to meet the man who promised her forever, but the moment he saw her, his eyes turned cold. "You look older than your letters," he whispered sharply. In front of a crowd, he rejected her as if her age was a flaw, not a journey. Clara stood there, frozen, embarrassed, and shattered. She had no idea where to go or what to do next, but fate had its own plans. A stranger watched it all quietly from afar. He wasn't just any man, he was about to turn her broken moment into a story the town would never forget, and what he did next left everyone speechless. Clara had spent her entire life giving, never asking for anything in return. In her quiet little town, she was known as the woman who always helped others, but never asked for help herself. She cooked for sick neighbors, looked after her aging parents, and raised her younger siblings like a second mother. But now, at 47, her heart ached with a silent truth: she had given love to everyone except herself. Nights were the hardest. The silence in her small home echoed the loneliness she tried to ignore. One evening, she stumbled upon an ad for mail-order brides. Her hands trembled as she wrote her story, simple, honest, and full of hope. "I don't want perfection," she wrote, "just someone to grow old with." Weeks later, a letter arrived from a man named Jacob. He sounded kind, strong, and serious. Clara smiled for the first time in days, unaware her biggest heartbreak was still waiting. Clara pressed the letter to her chest as the train rolled into the dusty little town Jacob had written about. Her heart raced with hope, nerves, and quiet joy. She had replayed their written conversations 100 times, memorizing every kind word, every detail he shared about his life, his land, and his longing for a companion. She stepped off the train in her best dress, nothing fancy, just neat, clean, and carefully chosen. She scanned the station, and there he was, tall, well-built, in a brown coat and hat, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. Their eyes met, but instead of smiling, his expression shifted. His face fell, his eyes narrowed. He took a step closer, then hesitated. "You're older than I expected," he said, his voice flat and cold. Clara's heart sank. She opened her mouth to speak, to explain, to laugh it off, but he looked her up and down like she was a product that didn't match the packaging. "You didn't say you were nearly 50, he added, voice sharper this time. A few townspeople nearby turned their heads. Clara's cheeks flushed. "I never lied," she whispered, barely able to meet his eyes, but Jacob didn't care. He tossed the flowers aside and turned his back. "I need a wife, not a mother," he muttered, walking away without even looking back. Clara stood frozen on the platform, surrounded by strangers and stares. Her suitcase sat beside her like a painful reminder that she had packed dreams, not knowing they'd be shattered in minutes. She waited. Maybe he would come back. Maybe he'd say he was shocked but willing to talk. But no, he was gone, and so was the warmth in the air. The sun suddenly felt harsher, and the town that once looked like a new beginning now felt like a punishment. She found a bench near the corner of the station and sat down, hands trembling, eyes wet. The pain wasn't just from the rejection. It was the way he rejected her, as if she wasn't even worth a conversation, as if her entire life's worth could be erased by a few wrinkles and a number. Tears streamed down her face, quiet and constant, like a storm she couldn't stop. She stared at the tracks, wondering where to go, what to do. All her courage, all her hope, it now felt foolish. Around her, people passed by, laughing, greeting, living their normal lives while she sat there unseen, unwanted, unloved. But what Clara didn't know was that someone had been watching the entire scene. A man across the street, leaning against a wooden post, had witnessed every word, every tear, every insult Jacob threw. And unlike the rest of the crowd, he didn't look away. His eyes stayed on her, not with pity, but with quiet curiosity, and something else, a flicker of recognition. Like he understood that kind of pain. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew one thing for sure: she deserved better, and maybe he was the one to give it. Clara sat motionless, Her hands clenched around the handle of her suitcase as if holding tighter could keep her heart from falling apart. The town faded into the background, laughter and footsteps blurred into silence. She felt invisible, like her presence didn't matter, like her dreams had been dismissed just because she dared to want love at her age. Just as she reached for a tissue inside her worn leather bag, a soft voice broke through the silence. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She looked up slowly, her vision blurry from tears. A man, maybe in his early 50s, stood a few feet away, holding out a bottle of water and a gentle gaze. His name was William. He wasn't dressed like a man trying to impress. His shirt was simple, sleeves rolled up, hands calloused, signs of someone who worked hard but lived honest. She hesitated, unsure whether to trust kindness again so soon. But something in his eyes felt safe. She took the bottle, nodding silently. "I saw what happened," he said softly, taking a seat at a careful distance. "Some people don't know the value of what stands before them." Clara's lips trembled, but she couldn't speak. She wasn't ready to tell her story, but William didn't pressure her. He simply sat there, quiet, present, and kind, something she hadn't felt in a long time. After a few minutes of silence, she finally whispered, "I wasn't expecting to be judged so fast, like I wasn't even human." William nodded slowly. "I know the feeling," he replied. "My wife passed away 7 years ago. Since then, people keep telling me to move on, to remarry, to fill the empty space. But love isn't something you replace. It's something you grow." Clara turned her face toward him. His voice wasn't rehearsed, it was real, raw. "And love," he added gently, "isn't about age. It's about connection and courage." That sentence hit her like a breeze on a hot day, unexpected, soothing, healing. For the first time in hours, she let out a soft, broken laugh. "I wrote dozens of letters," she said. He was the only one who replied. "I thought that meant something." William looked at her with a steady calm. "It did mean something. It brought you here. It brought you to this moment. And sometimes, the wrong door closing leads you to the right one." They talked for hours, not about broken hearts, but about books, gardens, music, and things that made them feel alive. Time slowed down. People came and went around them, but the bench beneath them became its own quiet world. Clara didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't even know what the next hour would look like. But in that moment, she wasn't alone. She was seen, she was heard, and maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to heal. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the train station grew quiet, William stood and offered Clara a simple choice: stay for a few days, just until you feel ready to leave. There was no pressure in his voice, just genuine care. Clara hesitated, but her heart, still fragile, sensed safety in his presence. She nodded softly. That night, she slept in the guest room of his modest farmhouse, surrounded by the quiet hum of crickets and the unfamiliar warmth of being wanted, not for what she could offer, but simply for being herself. Days turned into weeks. Clara found herself helping in small ways around the farm, watering plants, feeding chickens, and baking warm bread that filled the kitchen with memories she didn't know she missed. She began to hum while she worked, then sing softly, her voice shaky at first, then growing stronger, like a bird rediscovering its wings. William watched from a distance, never intruding, but always near. He noticed how she smiled when talking to the animals, how she wiped sweat from her brow without complaint, how she listened with her full heart. In her quiet way, Clara had brought life back to a home that had forgotten how to breathe. And in return, something inside her began to heal. One afternoon, a group of neighbors stopped by, and someone asked William if Clara was his wife. Before he could answer, Clara looked away, expecting embarrassment, but William smiled. "She's someone very special," he said simply, making her heart flutter in a way she hadn't felt in decades. That night, under a sky full of stars, they sat on the porch sipping tea, wrapped in silence that felt like music. Fireflies danced in the dark, and the world felt still. William turned to her, his voice low but certain. "I've had a bride before, a good woman. I thought I'd never find someone who could bring light into this house again." Clara listened, her hands resting on her lap. "But you," he continued, "you didn't just walk into this house, you brought it back to life." She swallowed hard, tears threatening to fall, and then he said the words that would stay with her forever. "Clara, I don't need a bride. I need you." Her breath caught. No man had ever said that to her, not even in her dreams. Not someone who saw her strength, her silence, her survival. In that moment, the pain of the train station, the weight of Jacob's rejection, and the years she spent feeling invisible all began to fade. What remained was the soft, steady warmth of something real. She didn't reply with words. She simply reached for his hand, and he held it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. A few mornings later, Clara found an envelope on the kitchen table with her name written in careful, thoughtful handwriting. Inside was a letter not typed, not fancy, just honest. "You once wrote letters looking for love," it said. "This time, I'm writing to give you mine." Her hands trembled as she read each line, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. William hadn't given her a ring. He gave her his heart in the way she understood best, through words. Weeks later, the same town that once watched her be broken now gathered again, but this time to witness a different kind of moment. Clara walked down the aisle not as a mail-order bride, but as a woman truly seen, chosen, and deeply loved. As she looked into William's eyes, she knew this wasn't a second chance. This was the real beginning, and for the first time in her life, love didn't feel like a dream. It felt like home.